We're continuing our look at motivation theory. So as a manager, we need to motivate our employees. And we understand that employee performance is ability. So are they trained? Do they have the resources? Do they have the skills? So that's ability times motivation. And we talked before about how motivation is based on energy, and is that energy in the right direction? And then when they run into challenges, will they persist? Will they persevere? So energy, direction, and persistence is what makes up motivation. So we're continuing to look at the theories of motivation, and let's look at that of Douglas McGregor. So Douglas McGregor is a management professor at MIT, looking at an individual's view on human behavior, looking at leaders. And what he found as he looked at leaders and how they interacted with their employees is that management tended to have one of two theories. He calls them theory X and theory Y. And I'm just going to move my face a little bit over here so you can read that. All right, so theory X. Theory X, management is very authoritarian, dictatorial, has quite tight control, telling employees what to do. And it's because they assume that workers have little ambition. They don't have a relationship with their workers. Perhaps they dislike them or don't respect them. And they believe that the employees want to avoid responsibility. So management must tell the workers what to do and must maintain tight control to make sure they stick to the task. They believe that workers left up to their own devices will goof off and not do work. And we can see some of this theory X behavior as we entered into COVID, right? When people had to start working remotely, there was this assumption that because the boss could no longer see what you were doing, that you wouldn't do any work, you just goof off all day, play video games, surf the internet, because no one was there to make sure you stayed on task. That's the theory X view of the employee. In contrast, theory Y believes that workers enjoy their work, that they take pride in their work, that they seek out opportunities to do more, they want more responsibility, and that they have that ability to be self-motivated and be responsible on their own. They exercise self-direction. So then the role of the manager is to create opportunities for the employee to showcase their talents, create opportunities for them by giving them more responsibility, liberating them, opportunities for development, opportunities for achievement and improvement. So what McGregor is saying is that management typically has one of these two views. Either they don't trust the worker or they are there to empower the worker. So the theories of motivation we've been looking at so far have been content theories. How are people motivated? So we've been looking at psychology and what psychology says about motivation. So we looked at Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We looked at Herzberg's two-factor theory. We looked at McClelland's three needs theory. We looked at McGregor's theory X and theory Y. And we also talked about what Mayo found in the work related to the Hawthorne effect. So now we're going to move into process theory. So as management, what are the processes? What are the things we can do as management in order to motivate our workers? We've already talked about Taylor's motivation theories, right? Pay workers better and they will perform better. So we're going to look at some additional process theories. And we'll look at Skinner and we'll look at Vroom. So let's look at some of these theories. So Victor Vroom is a Canadian professor of psychology at Yale, and his work is what is called expectancy theory. So expectancy theory says individuals tend to act in a certain way based on the expectation that their actions will be followed by a given outcome, and they will then do that behavior if that outcome is attractive. So with expectancy theory, we're looking at the connection between individual effort and how you are going to assess my performance and how you're going to reward my performance and the individual goals that I have. So it's really about, in terms of management, connecting those pieces. So what we need to do is we need to connect the effort to the performance. So this is what Vroom calls improving expectancy. Improve the ability of the individual to perform. So we make sure the employee has necessary tasks and training, right? So that's that first part of performance, that ability part. Do we have the training? Do we have the resources? Do we have the skills? Have you been assigned a reasonable task? Is this something that's even doable? So this is tying my effort to performance. So if I am trying to give a strong performance, I want to do well as an employee, then I need that connection between the effort I put in and the results in terms of that performance. So I'm not going to perform well, do well in my job, if I don't have the proper training, if I don't have the necessary skills, or maybe my boss just hasn't given me a task that's actually doable. Maybe it's a problem that can't be solved. Maybe the information they've given me is wrong. So my efforts don't lead to positive performance if I don't have all those pieces. That's improving expectancy. Then we need a connection between my performance. So let's say I do well at the task I've been given. Then I need that to connect to the reward. So am I rewarded for high performance? So is it observed? Is it recognized? If I'm promised rewards, do I get them? And are those rewards tied to good performance? So we're encouraging certain behaviors by giving praise, by giving pay to that good performance. So that's what Vroom calls improving instrumentality, that linkage between performance and reward. And finally, what we need is we need those rewards to be things that are actually meaningful to the employee. So if you're going to give me recognition, is recognition something I value? If you're going to give me a pay for my performances, that's something I value. So do the rewards, are they actually something that employees want? That's that last piece. That's the attractiveness. And this is what Vroom calls improving valence, making sure the reward is meaningful to the individual. So if I think about this in terms of my grades, first step, I'm going to work hard on the assignment. Well, is my hard work and time I put into the assignment going to turn into a good grade? That's the individual performance. And then we'll assume that I want a good grade, right? That I need that grade to get a good grade in the overall class. So for example, if you're given an assignment, but at the end of the day, that assignment is worth less than 0.5%, well, why am I putting in all that effort to do well on the assignment that takes hours if the reward is going to be very little change in my final grade? So effort linked to performance, that's improving expectancy. Performance linked to the rewards, that's improving instrumentality. And then the rewards have to link to my goals. Well, if my goal is a good GPA, then I need to put the time into the assignment, get a good grade on the assignment, have it actually change my overall course grade because I want to get a good GPA. There needs to be linkage between all of these components in order for people to be motivated. We're going to look at a couple other motivational theories. So again, process-related motivational theories. We talked very briefly here about Ivan Pavlov just because we want to differentiate between his work in classical conditioning and Skinner's work in terms of what's called operant conditioning. So you probably heard of Pavlov, ring the bell, the dog salivates. First you do that every time there's food in front, then you remove the food, you still ring the bell, the dog still salivates. So here when we talk about classical conditioning, this is an involuntary response to stimulus. So it's automatic that we do it. We want to differentiate this to the motivational theory of B.F. Skinner. So B.F. Skinner's work is in operant conditioning. And operant conditioning is voluntary behavior. Okay, so Pavlov was involuntary, B.F. Skinner looks at voluntary. So when we're looking at B.F. Skinner's work of operant conditioning, we're looking at voluntary behavior. And B.F. Skinner really just looks at the idea of how our behavior is being influenced. And so he says there's no free will. Free will is an illusion. That's because everything we do has a consequence. And so if we look at what people do, people take into consideration the consequences of their actions when they decide voluntarily to do something. And even though B.F. Skinner wrote a book back in 1948 about the idea of free will and individual rights, this issue is really prevalent today. So back in the 40s, what he was looking at is this big push for individual freedom, right? Don't tell me what to do. I should have freedom of speech, freedom to do what I want. And his argument then was that there's no such thing as free will, because anything you do will have consequences, right? It changes the way the people around you perceive you, how they act, how they respond to you. That there really is no such thing as free speech, because speech will have consequences. There's no such thing as, true freedom, because everything is going to result in some kind of consequences. So if you insist that individual rights are the summa bonum, so that is the end all be all, then the whole structure of society falls down, because we can't assume that there's a life of no consequences. And how this relates then to our motivational theory for management is that when we look at what motivates people, it is the consequences of their behavior which determines whether or not they do anything. So if we think about your behavior at work, at home, at school, who influences your behavior? So what you do at work is influenced by your colleagues, how they see you, what they encourage you to do and not do. At home, by your spouse, your significant other. At school, you're influenced by your teachers, your peers. So because we care what these people think about us, because we care about future interactions with people, we recognize that there are consequences to our actions and our behavior, and that, of course, will change our behavior. So in Skinner's reinforcement theory, the idea is that we look at those consequences of people's behavior. And we could shape behavior through punishment, right? So we could have a very authoritarian management system, would call you out when you do something wrong, shame you in front of everybody else, punishment, you have extra work. What Skinner found is that when you use punishment to shape behavior, it has temporary results and it can create unwanted consequences. In previous videos, we talked about active disengagement, where the employees, the direction of that motivation is in the wrong way, so they're actively sabotaging the work and the people within work. So the concern with Skinner is that if you have a punishment system, if the consequences are punishment-based, then while it will be effective temporarily, it can lead to unwanted consequences. So instead, Skinner is advocating for positive or negative reinforcement. So positive reinforcement, we give people something. Negative reinforcement, we take away the bad things. Okay, so what we're talking about here is removing the undesirables. That's negative reinforcement. Positive reinforcement, we're giving you the good stuff. Negative reinforcement, we're taking away the bad stuff. So that has a much greater effect on motivation. If we, instead of doing punishment, we instead give people good things or remove the negative things to encourage behavior, and that it is reinforcement and what Skinner calls extinction, the absence of a reward. So if you don't get a reward, a positive or negative reinforcement, then you're not motivated to do something. So it's reinforcement and extinction that can change behavior. Punishment has just a short-term or temporary impact. But because people look at the outcomes, look at the consequences of their behavior, then we can actually motivate people to behave certain ways. So give them the good things or remove the negative things. And if they don't do it, you have extinction or an absence of reward rather than punishment. So as we think about yourself in terms of your performance, when you think about your own performance, Are you able to assess how well you are motivated and how well you can motivate others? And so if you're following along with the Pearson Revel self-assessments, here we have on diagnosing poor performance and enhancing motivation. So it's broken down here into 7 different areas. And so we have how well are you at diagnosing performance problems, so recognizing when you're not performing well. So that's ability, member, times motivation. And you can see here with my diagnosing performance problems, I'm lower on that than some of these other components. Recognizing that when we are diagnosing performance problems, right, this is both the external factors, are you given the resources that you need, as well as your personal abilities. And so if you're feeling like you're not getting resources you need, then that's going to impact your ability to perform. Do you have the ability to establish expectations and set clear goals? Are you facilitating the performance of others and enhancing their abilities? Are you able to link performance to rewards and discipline, right? So if we go back to Vroom, in terms of that connection, as we look at that instrumentality, right? Rewards to the different goals that we have, that would be our valence. And then in terms of linking performance to the rewards, that would be the instrumentality component. Are there internal and external incentives for performance? We look at the issue of distributing rewards equitably. So as an instructor, one of the things that haunts me at night is as I grade papers, have I given the same grade to the same type of performance? And so as we're looking at and reflecting on our own abilities, right, that's one that's particularly of concern to me in terms of, am I distributing rewards equitably? And then are we providing timely and straightforward performance feedback? And as my students, you'll probably disagree with the rating there in terms of how quickly you get a feedback on how well you're performing. So we can see the different aspects in terms of diagnosing poor performance and tying that to motivation. Are we able to diagnose the problem? Do we have clear goals? Are we encouraging others' positive performance? Is the performance linked to the rewards? Is there the proper incentives? And are the rewards equitable and timely? So those are the different components that we need in terms of diagnosing poor performance and enhancing motivation.